Hello, what's up YouTube? Ronix with another tutorial, and in this tutorial I want to show you guys every single detail about skin retouching and color grading in Photoshop. So you just want to be learning everything about skin retouching from the very start to the very end, because most of you people tend to watch so many tutorials on YouTube and they tend to skip or rush through this process of skin retouching, and you feel a little bit cheated after watching the tutorial. But this tutorial, you're going to be learning every single step about skin retouching, color grading, how to remove blemishes, and how to best save your images after doing your skin retouching so that they don't change in color every single time you upload them on social media or put them on a different device. So right now this is a raw file and I'm in my Camera Raw interface and the version of Camera Raw. So if at all you don't know what Camera Raw is, basically Camera Raw is like a raw processing software that enables you to play around or convert your raw files into maybe JPEG so that you can do the retouching in Photoshop later on, or whichever software that you'll be dealing with. So right now I'm in the camera interface, and right here we have the details about the image, and it is a raw file. This was taken using Canon 6D camera, and here you can see details about the image. ISO 100. I shot it at 85mm lens and using a 7.1 aperture, and the shutter speed was 1 out of 250 of a second. So I'm just going to show you guys what I did to process this raw file, and this is the before of the image and this is the after. So let me show you guys the different adjustments I was able to do on this image. So usually you can see I turned the tint down to around -4 to eliminate the greens in the image, because when you move this slider towards the green side, you'll be removing magenta from the image. Then under the basic slider, I added contrast to the image to around 7. You can see the image was lacking contrast, so I added contrast to around 7. Then I pushed the highlights down and my shadows up. So I basically did these adjustments to get back the information in the image. So let me show you guys what I did for the color grading, because these are like the minor adjustments when you are working on the raw files, and I don't want this to be a pretty long tutorial. So this is what I did. I added blacks to the image and I pulled the whites down. Then I added some clarity to sharpen the image even more. Then I added some little bit of vibrance to the image, or I rather reduced the vibrance to -8 and added some saturation to 1. And under color grading, you can see what I did. I pushed the reds towards the oranges, then I pushed the oranges towards the red side. So when you are playing around with the hues, whenever you move the hue of a given color towards the right hand side, you'll be targeting the color beneath it, and when you move it towards the left hand side, you'll be targeting the color on top of it. So I added oranges to the reds and I added reds to the oranges. Then I pushed the yellows towards the green side, and I did the same for the greens towards the aquas. Then under saturation, I simply reduced the saturation of the reds because I wanted this to be a rich melanin skin tone kind of look. I reduced the reds to -25 and the oranges to -9. Then I desaturated the greens, because when you're adding the greens towards the highlights, they tend to be a little bit much. Then under luminance, luminance is more of the lightness or darkness of a given color. I pushed the reds all the way down to -34 to darken the reds and make the skin tone a little bit richer. Then I also did the same for the oranges to -42, and I brightened up the yellows in this image. So let me just undo that. You can see what this did. So I'm just going to leave it the way it was. So basically that is what I did for the color grading of a skin tone. And I came here to split toning and I added some colors to the highlights. So you can see the color I was able to add into the highlights of the image. You can see that it adds that kind of green color to the highlights. So I'm just going to reset it. Just going to leave it at 7, and I added a little bit of blues to the shadows, and that is all I did for this image. So you can see the before and the after. So just want to open the image into Photoshop to do the skin retouching, and in order to do that, just come and hit open, and the image is going to open into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and I already cropped the image in a ratio of 45 so that whenever I post it on Instagram, it doesn't get cropped. So here we are in Photoshop. So a technique we're going to be learning about is called frequency separation. So this is the most misused technique of skin retouching by most people. It is the commonest, but as well as the most misused kind of technique of skin retouching. So basically, let's first of all define frequency separation. Frequency separation is a skin retouching technique that divides the image into two layers. So when it divides the image, it divides it into the colors and the textures, so that when we work on those two layers independent of one another, we can achieve the best results from the colors or maybe the skin tones and from the textures. So when you combine all those layers or both layers, we get a very nicely and well retouched image at the end of the process. So it is what we're going to be doing in this very tutorial or on this particular image. So just come to the background and make sure it is locked. So just want to create those two layers. So in order to create those two layers, just hit Ctrl or Command J twice on the keyboard, and you're going to see that you have layer 1 and layer 1 copy. So we can rename this to low frequency, and you're going to name this into high frequency, just like that. And after doing that, make sure you turn off the high frequency layer by hitting on the eye icon, and make sure it is selected or highlighted. So in the low frequency layer, we only want to remain with the colors or skin tones of this particular image. So in order to remain with the colors or the skin tones, we have to blur out or extract the textures or the details from the image. So make sure that this layer is selected and come to filter, and you come to blur, and you come to Gaussian blur. So when you come to Gaussian blur, the radius is going to be like all the way down. So we have where it says preview. Make sure the preview option is checked, and you have the zoom option. So make sure you look for that area that seems to have more skin details than the rest of the image. So you can just sample by clicking on the image. You left click. I think this area has more textures than the rest of the skin in this portrait. So come and left click and start moving this towards the right hand side. So left click and start dragging it towards the right hand side, and stop up to that point when you're losing out, when you're starting to lose out on these details. So stop at that point when the details are just starting to get lost or disappear from the image. So I'm just going to move this. So I think at 7, that's when I'm losing out on the details. The reason for selecting the or targeting the area with more details, it means that when those details are starting to disappear from the image, it means that every other detail in the skin is going to be lost automatically. So make sure you come and hit OK. So the image is going to turn a little bit blurry. If at all I use Ctrl plus or Command plus on the keyboard to zoom in, you can see the image looks a little bit blurry and out of focus. So we're going to come and select the high frequency layer and turn it back on by clicking on this eye icon right here. So for the high frequency layer, unlike the low frequency layer, we only want to remain with the skin details or the skin texture or the details in the image. So make sure it is selected and highlighted, then come to image and you come down to apply image. So it is on this point whereby we have to take maximum attention, and if at all you're liking and you're enjoying this tutorial, don't forget to like this video or drop a comment in the comment section. So it is on this point that you have to take into consideration the bit depth of your image. So you can see that on this image you have 16 bit, but you are going to be learning on different kind of bit depth of images. We have the most common are 8 and 16 bit. So on this step you have to look at this and note it down. So you are going to get back this window right here. So in order to retain the details in the image, you have to first of all come and select the layer from which we extracted those textures, which is the low frequency layer. So come and select it because we just want to get or steal the details from the low frequency layer, and make sure you come and select it. So if at all you're working on a 16-bit image, come to the blending mode and change it from whichever it is and change it to add. That is for a 16-bit image. So 16-bit image, the blending mode has to be add. Opacity at 100, preserve transparency and mask are not checked. The scale has to be 2 and offset at 0. Always make sure the preview button is checked. So for a 16-bit image, come and check the invert option, and when you do that, you're going to see that the details or the textures are going to be on this gray kind of layer. So if at all you're working with an 8-bit image, I'm just going to turn off the invert. If at all it is an 8-bit image, come and select the low frequency layer from which you are going to steal the details from, and the blending mode has to be subtract. Opacity at 100, preserve transparency and mask are not checked. The scale is 2 and offset 128. The reason for these values basically is we have to get the details or the textures on a 50% gray kind of layer. So the colors in the RGB are 256. So when we divide those colors by 2, we get 128. That's why we put these values. And make sure for an 8-bit image you don't check the invert option. So basically that is what we do, and we are going to get back the details like we had for a 16-bit image. So we're just going to come back and we choose the details for 16-bit image. So blending mode for 16-bit is add, opacity at 100, scale is 2 offset 0, and make sure you turn on the invert option to have the details on a 50% gray kind of layer, and hit OK. So just want to reveal back the image, and the blend mode that is going to be revealing back the details in the image is going to be linear light. So come and left click here and scroll all the way down and look for linear light. So when you select linear light, you're going to get back the image the way it was initially before. So just want to put these two layers into a group. So come and hit Command or Control and click on left click on both layers and drag them into this folder like icon, or you can use Control or Command G on the keyboard to group these layers. So I'm just going to name this into frequency separation. So we want to prove if at all we have successfully divided the frequencies of this image. So when you turn this on and off, you can see that there is no difference between the original image and our frequency separation, or the group in which contains the layers that we separated or divided the image into two. So we're just going to confirm that, and you can see when I turn this on and off, there is no difference at all. So when you open the frequency separation group, we have our layers. So usually for skin retouching, it is more of having a nice and smooth transition within the skin tones of a given image, and you have to come and select the layer that contains those skin tones or the colors. So come and select the low frequency layer which contains the colors or skin tones of a particular image. So when you select that layer, you're just going to come and get a tool that is going to enable us blend or transition the skin tones quite well. And for this technique or this tutorial, we're going to be incorporating two techniques. That is the one for using the lasso tool, and the second one is going to be the mixer brush tool. So rather, the mixer brush tool is going to be our base kind of technique, and the lasso tool is going to be the fine-tuning kind of technique for skin retouching. So as you're retouching, you're going to be noticing that your tool is going to turn into a cross-like icon. So every single time you're doing skin retouching, make sure you turn off the caps lock key, because if you leave it on, it is going to change whichever tool that you're going to be using into this kind of cross-like icon, which you don't want. So turn off the caps lock key and you get back the tool displaying the way it is meant to be. So after selecting the low frequency layer, you're going to come under the brushes and right click and get the mixer brush tool. So come under the brushes and right click and get the mixer brush tool. And for older versions of Photoshop, you may notice that the mixer brush tool may be located down here. So just right click and get the mixer brush tool. So we just want to set this brush so that it is going to be working for us best as we are trying to even out the skin tones in this particular image. So we're going to set it. So above here, that is when or where we have to set up the tool so that we can have the base out of our image. I'm sorry if at all you can hear some little bit of noise. It is really a noisy neighborhood for me right here. So I'm just going to look for a solution for that. So here we are on this image. So we have selected the low frequency layer, and it is on this layer that we just want to blend or even out the skin tones in this image. So come and get the mixer brush tool. We have selected it. Make sure it is a clean one. So left click and make sure it is a clean one. We have two options, which the first one says load the brush after each and every stroke, and the second one says clean the brush after each and every stroke. So just want to select this because we don't want to carry color of skin tones from one area to another. The wetness, we're going to be using a wet of 9%. The load is 75 because we don't want the brush to be overloaded, and the mix, we just want a nice transition within the skin tone. We're just going to leave it at 90%, the flow at 100%. So as we're working on the low frequency layer, make sure sample all layers is not checked or selected because we don't want to steal or paint details into the low frequency layer. So we don't want to copy or paste details. We only want to work on this layer. So make sure you don't select the sample all layers option. So you're just going to zoom in by using Control Command Plus. And if at all you just want to see where you want to even out the tones well, come and turn off the high frequency layer. And when you do that, you can see your image turns a little bit blurry, but in this point or in this case, you can increase on the size of the mixer brush tool and by using the box brackets on the keyboard. So you're just going to hold down the left click button. I'm doing this using my touchpad, or if at all you have a mouse, you can use the same. So I'm just going to left click and move the brush in that format depending on how a given area is shaped. So I'm painting in an up down formation because this area is shaped in that kind of format. So when it comes to the forehead, I'm just going to, so you have to paint the colors depending on how they look. So if at all I have shadows here, I'm just going to paint those shadows alone and release and come and paint just like that. So I have a highlight, I'm just going to blend that highlight just like that. And as you can see, everything is happening in real time because you can't see the details that are going to be distracting you as you're trying to even. So make sure you really do this slowly and gradually as you're looking at the image. And as you can see, you can turn this back on to see on your progress so far. So turn this on and off before and after. You can see the image is really turning out to look nice and better. So turn this back off and make sure you're still on the low frequency layer. You can now zoom in and we have a shadow here. I'm just going to paint that shadow alone. And when it comes to those areas whereby the skin tones are just trying to transition, just come and paint that area and just harmonize so that you can have a nice transition. Remember, like I said, skin retouching is more about transitioning the skin tones of an image really nice and well. So I'm just going to come to this area and paint these colors or tones just like that, and come this area and just paint. Reduce on the size and come to the eyebrow area and just come and paint that eyebrow area just like that. So you have to take your time, and when it comes to the nose area, blend these colors alone separately or independent, and come this shadow and just blend. You can say nose is shaped from an up down kind of format, So just move your brush in that kind of formation. So you have to take your time as you're doing this, because as you're doing skin retouching, we don't want the format or the face of the model to be altered or changed in the process. So you just want to ensure that everything is done in the right direction or the right format. So just come and do that, and make sure that every area is painted in the process. So just come and do this. So you have to take your time as you're doing skin retouching, because you don't want to be careless with the technique. So the good thing about using a mixer brush tool, it enables us to even out the skin tones quite well. So let's see the before and after, but you can notice that we still have the original skin details in this image. So you're just going to come and apply it on this side, so you can zoom in to blend an area quite well, if at all you cannot see the area really well. So just come in. Remember, we are only painting on the low frequency layer, or we have selected the low frequency layer, and we're just trying to paint or even out those details in the skin area, because we're just working or having or ensuring that we have even transition within the skin tones or the color of the skin tones of this particular image, just like that. So we're just trying to blend, or we're just actually working as painters and trying to have soft transitions within the color of the skin tones in this particular image. So just come and blend just like that. I know it is really monotonous, but as a retoucher, you have to take your time as you're doing this, because you don't want to have a really shabbily done retouched image. You just want the best out of the retouched image. So just come and blend. So I'm just going to come the chin area. Remember, skin retouching, you have to tackle or handle every single area in the images, like neck area, increase on the size. So you have to play around with different sizes depending on the area you're trying to work on. So come to this area and blend or transition that area quite well. So come and paint in these shadows just like that, so that we can have a nicely, or we have that kind of smudge kind of look for the image. But remember, it is not losing out on the details, because we are working on the colors and blending those colors quite well. So let's just come and paint these areas just like that. Let's just paint and have those nice transitions within the skin tones just like that. Nice and easy, I know. So I'm basically left clicking and dragging depending on the direction of a particular area that I'm trying to work on. So just come and do this. So command minus to zoom out. I'm sorry about the noise. If at all you can hear any noise in the background, I'm just going to turn on the texture layer to see the progress so far. So this is the before and after, before, after. And if at all you feel like you haven't blended some areas quite well, you can as well work with the texture layer on, so that you can blend every single area really nice and well. So when you turn this off, it means that you just want to look at the colors and those areas that have those bumpiness within the skin tones. And if at all you want a nice image, I would always recommend that you learn how to use the mixer brush tool, because it is really of a game changer in your retouching technique. Once you practice and master it, you're going to be good to go, especially if at all you love frequency separation, or if at all you love how to use macro, dodge and burn. So let's see the before and after so far. So this is the before and after. Before, after, the image is really nice and it has really transformed and looks beautiful and amazing. So like I said, we're just going to be incorporating everything using the lasso tool and the mixer brush tool while we are trying to blend or even the transitions within the skin tones. So before, after, we just want now to use the second technique, which is the lasso tool. So come and select the lasso tool, and we are still working on the low frequency layer. Make sure it is still highlighted. So just want to select particular areas of the skin that we want to fine tune even more. So if at all you want to fine tune those areas, make sure the feathering is 22 pixels, because as we are selecting the skin area that we want to fine tune or perfect, we want nice and smooth edges, because if at all your feathering is around 0 pixels or 1 pixel, it means that the selection you make is going to be really rough and it is not going to be really feathered or smooth enough. So make sure you select between 20 and 30 pixels. So for this I prefer 20 pixels, and make sure this option right here is selected, the very first one here. So we're just going to make a selection on the skin area. So come left click, drag and draw depending on the shape of a particular area, just like that. So for this case, I'm selecting the forehead. As you're selecting, you have to keep away from the eyebrows and the hair and the edges of the face or the body. So come back to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So remember, this is the radius that we had initially. We had a radius of 7 when dividing the frequencies of the image. So when you start moving this towards the right hand side, you left click and start moving. As you're looking at the details in the skin, you are going to notice that it really gets really finer and better. So at around 21, I have a really nice detail in the skin area. But let me share with you guys a trick that I use. So remember, we had a radius of 7 pixels. So when you multiply that radius, or whichever radius you may have used on your images, remember different images have different radiuses, because different cameras have or capture different details within the skin. So when you multiply that by 3, or whichever radius you may have used when you're applying your frequency separation or dividing the frequencies of your image, whenever you multiply that by 3, you are going to get the best or perfect skin texture in the image. So for this case, 7 by 3 is 21. So I'm just going to delete that 7 and type in 2, 1, and you can see that the detail is really natural and beautiful, and it is really natural enough. So come and hit OK, and you can use Command D to deselect or Control D to deselect, or you can just click on another area and it is automatically going to deselect that area. So just want to apply it onto the rest of the image. So come and do this, and as you're using the lasso tool technique, make sure you keep away from selecting the highlights, because when you apply it on the highlights, it makes the image flat. So right click and come to Gaussian blur, and when you feel like the effect is too much for your liking, you can simply right click on that selection and you come to fade Gaussian blur, or you can use Shift Command F or Shift Control F and reduce on the opacity of that effect. So we're just going to leave everything the way it is at 100%, because I want this to be really nice and flawless for you. So I'm just going to come and select. You can see the one drawing these shapes is the way a particular area is really shaped in this case. So you're just going to apply it onto the rest of the image and come to the chin area and apply this like that. Right click and come to Gaussian blur. So you can see I usually prefer to, when it comes to the nose area, just apply it on one side. Don't apply it on the overall nose. So just apply it nice and easy, because we don't want to flatten the nose. So like I said, for the nose area, if at all the model was facing straight into the camera, it means that I have to apply it on the shadows on both areas of the nose, and when it comes to the highlight, just apply a little bit and reduce on the opacity so that the nose doesn't look flat. So I'm just going to come and apply my Gaussian blur to this area. Right click and come to Gaussian blur, and this really looks nice and better. So look at the before and after for the skin retouching using frequency separation. And what is really amazing is we still have the original details within the skin. So the next thing is going to be cleaning up the skin or removing the blemishes or imperfections within the skin. And in order to do that, come and select the layer that contains the details or the details in the skin area. And in order to select those details, we have to come to the layer that contains the details within the skin area, and that layer is going to be our high frequency layer in this case. So you're just going to select that high frequency layer and come and get whichever tool that we want. And for those interested in tutorials about how I do remove blemishes from images, I'm going to link for you guys a video right above here. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to be talking about the clone stamp tool because I prefer to work with it, and it is really my best technique to remove blemishes. So make sure you select the clone stamp tool, and the hardness are going to be using around 39%. Opacity and the flow at 100. Make sure aligned is selected. And for this case, sample, make sure you come and select current layer because we only want to work with the details in the high frequency layer. So you have to zoom all the way in because you just want to remove these imperfections within the skin or the blemishes. And how this works, you have to hold down the alternate close to the blemish at one to remove, alternate, left click to copy. So look for a clean area close to the blemish, and you're going to be copying that area and pasting it over the blemish to eliminate it. So alternate, left click, alternate, left click to copy, and left click to paste over the blemish. So alternate, alternate, hold down the alternate and left click as you're still holding down the alternate, and copy and paste just like that. So that is how this works, and this really produces the best results as you're trying to clean up the images or remove these imperfections within the skin while you're using the clone stamp tool to clean up or remove blemishes. So I'm just going to do this. I wish I could forward, but I just want you guys to follow everything as we are doing it in due time. So let's just clean up this. So remember to always remove the blemishes every single time you do skin retouching, because most people tend to zoom in and look for those mistakes. For example, the mistakes or the blemishes you may have forgotten or accidentally left out when you're doing skin retouching. So always make sure that you do that and take your time as you're cleaning up or removing those imperfections within the skin or the blemishes from your images. I'm sorry if at all you can hear some noise. Some kids are playing out here. It is really annoying, but there are kids in and they have to play. So I'm just going to increase on the size. So you can increase on the size of your clone stamp tool by using the brackets or the brackets on the keyboard to eliminate or increase on the size of the clone stamp tool depending on the area you're trying to clean up in your images. So I'm just going to clean up this, and when I'm done cleaning up, we're going to be doing a little bit of adding shape or dimension to this image before we can color grade and save this image later on. So let's just clean up these areas or this image. So I'm just going to clean up this, and the last bit is going to be cleaning up the forehead. So I'm basically using the clone stamp tool, and the layer I've selected as I'm removing is the high frequency layer, and this layer is what contains the details that I'm trying to clean up in the skin area of this image. So let's just do this, and within a few minutes we are going to be done while removing these blemishes. So let me just clean up this, and I think we are almost good to go. So I'm just going to use command minus. So you have to clean up the image as you're zooming in and out to see what blemishes you may have left out in your images. So just going to hold down and clean up or remove this kind of imperfection with the skin, because this is more of a beauty portrait, and for beauty portraits you always have to make sure that you leave nothing regarding the imperfection of the skin, because we are focusing more on the beauty side of our photography and not just trying to do maybe those kind of, I should call it documentation or documentary, I don't know. So let's just clean up this, and within a minute we are going to be done removing or cleaning up these imperfections. But you always have to take your time, because blemish removal is going to contribute over 70% to your overall skin retouching. So always and always make sure to take your time while cleaning up or removing blemishes from your images. I'm sorry about the noise, because that is beyond my control and I can't get done. I can't just stop this tutorial right now. And let me just hope you bear with me. I'm just going to clean up the imperfections in these areas. So just come and clean up these blemishes. Reduce on the size and come and clean up these tiny imperfections. So command minus to zoom out. So we're going to remove a little bit more of the whiteheads, and I just wanted this to be the last step for the blemish removal in this tutorial. So just come and remove more of the prominent whiteheads, I should call them, in this image. So let's just clean up this, and you're going to be done with the skin retouching, and we can focus more on the dodging and burning. So under dodging and burning, we're going to be doing a technique of maybe global dodging and burning, and under global dodging and burning will be enhancing the dimension of the model's facial structures, and that is going to help us have that kind of three-dimensional look for the images. And for a three-dimensional look, we are talking about enhancing maybe the makeup or contouring the model's face. So we are just going to use command minus to zoom out to see what we have so far, and this looks really nice and beautiful. So let's just get rid of these tiny ones. So let's just clean up this, and let's do a little bit of cleaning up onto the neck area. So I'm basically using the clone stamp tool to clean up or remove the imperfections. So I think we're done removing the blemishes from this image. You can see before and after, before, after. I feel like I still have some tiny blemish right here. So let me just get rid of that. So I think you're done cleaning up the blemishes from the image. So like I said, the next thing is going to be contouring this image or adding shape or dimension. So for the touching, this is the before and after, before, after. So just want to enhance the facial features for this model. And the technique I'm going to be using is the technique of simply adding those shape and dimension using the curves adjustment layers. So we are simply going to come to the curves adjustment layers, and under this I'm going to be using a technique that is also going to color grade this image even better or more. So I'm just going to create a curves adjustment layer. I'm just going to come to select, and I'm going to come to color range. So under color range, we have where it says select, and under this I'm just going to come to sampled layers, and selection, make sure it is selection is activated, and quick mask is also selected. So come and look for a highlight in the image. So I just want to select a highlight, and when you select that highlight, you're going to notice that it is really going to make a really nice selection. So you can see the selected area in the image. You can see that this is our selected area, so you can increase on the fuzziness or reduce on the fuzziness. So for this case, I'm just going to leave it at around 64, and you can see that the highlight has been selected. So come and hit OK. So when you are targeting the highlights or enhancing the highlights in the image, will be dodging, and when you're doing the reverse, will be burning. So make a midpoint and increase, and it's going to be brightening up the image. So before, after, it has targeted the highlights, so that is going to be dodge, and we're going to do the same for the burning. Come back to the curves adjustment layers, and come back to select and come to color range, and this time around target the shadows. So look for the shadows in the image, and you can see we have now targeted the shadows in this image, and here it is going to be showing an inverted mask. So the targeted area is always going to be white in color, and hit OK. And now make a midpoint and left click and drag down to darken. So make sure you do it mini, like not too much or in a subtle way. And now close this. So if at all this is targeting or changing colors in the image, just going to name this into a burn. So we are going to select both layers, and now after selecting both layers, hit Ctrl Command G on the keyboard, and we can name this dodge and burn. And I'm sorry about the noise, it was really too much and really getting annoying in this case. So if at all you don't want it to affect colors, come and change the blend mode for the burn into luminosity, and you're going to do the same for the dodge and change it to luminosity. And when you feel like the effect is too much, you can come and reduce on the individual effect. On maybe for the burn, come and reduce on the opacity, so you can see before after, just like that. So I'm just going to leave everything at around 85, and this is the before and after for the dodging and burning to add shape or dimension, and the image is really now getting to look better. So right now I just want to do a little bit of color grading on this image. So I'm just going to come to the black and white adjustment layer, and after I've created that, I'm simply going to come to the blend mode, and I'm just going to select multiply. And the image I know is getting darker. I'm just going to come and reduce on the opacity for that to around 13%, and I'm just going to come back to the black and white adjustment layer, but this time around leave the blend mode to normal, and I'm just going to simply reduce on the opacity of that effect, just like that. So you can see I'm just going to leave it at around, let me just go with around 20 looks good. I'm just going to come back to the contrast and add a little bit more of contrast to this image to around, let's go with the contrast, so 5. Then come to selective color, and I'm going to make sure it is selected, and come to right down to blacks and add blacks into the image to around 2. And now I could, the opposite of yellow is blue, so I can as well add that kind of blue to the image, but that is too much. I'm just going to add some little bit of blues up to around -1 can do. So you can see the image is now looking really nice and better. So let's see where we have come from and where we are right now. But I feel like the image is a little bit warm for my liking, and I'm going to come to the photo filter option, and I'm going to come to cooling filter 82 and just reduce on the warmth of the image to up to around, just going to go with around 3, and that looks really, let me just go with around 2 is fine. So let me put the color grading in a group, so shift, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to this layer and hit Ctrl Command G on the keyboard, and I'm going to name this into color grade. So let's say before and after for the color grading. So this is the before and after, and the image really has that nice and beautiful melanin skin tone look. So I'm just going to do a little bit of eye whitening to this model's eyes. So before I do that, I'm just going to create a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, or Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard to create a stamp visible layer. I'm just going to get my clone or spot healing brush tool and zoom in to clean up the eyes a little bit to eliminate the amount of veins. So I'm just basically clicking to clean up or remove these veins from the eyes of the model. Command Z to undo if at all you have made a mistake. Just going to clean up this other area by simply clicking and removing these veins. So I'm just going to go back to the camera raw filter to do the eye whitening. So come to filter and come to the camera raw filter, and when you come to the camera raw filter, simply click to zoom in, or you can use Command plus to zoom into the eye area. Come and get what is called or known as the adjustment brush tool. So you just want to set this up so that it whitens the eye better. So after getting the adjustment brush tool, make sure the temperature is all the way, because we want to eliminate the yellows from the white area of the eye. So for temperature, I'm just going to go with around a temperature of around 20. And since we have greens in the white area of the eye, in order to eliminate greens, move the slider towards the opposite of green, which is magentas. Just going to go with 58. Highlights, I'm just going to brighten up the whites a little bit and the whites in the eye to around 5. And desaturate the rest of the colors. Saturation all the way down to around negative 65 will do. And increase on the size and simply left click and paint over. So left click and move the brush. So make sure you are only painting on what you feel should be white in the white area of the eye. So you can as well paint on this catch light just like that. So just do this, command minus to zoom out. I know the eye looks a little bit too white, but that is going to be fixed later on. So let's just paint over the white area, reduce on the size and come and paint over this side and enhance that catch light tool just like that. So I think the eye really looks white, but it is a little bit overdone. So I'm just going to come the saturation and take this up and come to the magenta option or slider and simply get back the whites just like that and add that kind of warmth to around, let's go with around 16 is fine. So this is the before after. Then the next thing I want to do on this image is coming to the HSL panel and do some little bit more of final touch-ups in the color grading process. So just going to come to the saturation and reduce on the saturation of the oranges. Just going to go with around -10. -10 looks nice. And I'm going to come to the hues and add a little bit of reds. Let me add a little bit of yellows to the oranges, and I think that looks nice and beautiful. So this is the before after. So I'm just going to open this back into Photoshop. So let's see what we have done for skin retouching, color grading, and dodging and burning for this image. So this was the image initially. If I hold down the alternate, this was the image initially before and after, before after. I hope you can see what we have done to this image. And if at all you have learned something, don't forget to like this video. So the next thing or the final thing is going to be saving this image the best way so that it doesn't change in color after you have been able to save it. And the best way is going to be by simply coming to File, Export, and coming to Export As. And when you come to Export As, it is going to give you this other window for you. And in order to do that, come and select the format, which is JPEG, and image size, leave the settings the way they are. Resampling, make sure you select by cubic sharper because I really want a sharp image. And make sure you embed color profile and also convert sRGB. So make sure the two options are checked or marked and simply hit export. So you can rename this to whatever you want. So I'm just going to name this maybe Retouch, and I'm just going to save it on my desktop and hit save. So it is going to save and close this window. So this has been all for today's tutorial, and if at all you have liked this and found this really helpful, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching from this channel for the very first time, Ronix from Ronnixphotography, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in yet more tutorials on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.